China prevented families from having more than one child for more than 3 decades. But now Beijing is trying to encourage couples to have more children to avert a looming demographic crisis. Recent statistics show the birth rate has fallen to its lowest in decades. The government sees this as a threat to economic growth and social stability. As a result, the state is now offering incentives to couples to have more babies, such as no longer maternity leaves, and up to 3 children are now also allowed. But some reports suggest Beijing is also using other methods to try to increase its population size. For example, by limiting vasectomies. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, this report.
The birth of a child at Shanghai's maternity hospital. A special moment, but one that is becoming less common as fewer Chinese women opt to have babies. The midwives here say that's a shame. I would like to see more children. I always hope that young people will have more children, but that's not the case. One new mother explains why she'll be sticking to just the one child, rather than follow government guidelines to have more. Nowadays, the government encourages to have more children. But we already have so much pressure at work, and 2 children are too much of a financial burden. This new baby's grandmother speaks about how the Chinese government's interventions in family planning have changed since she gave birth. In my time, the policies limited the number of children. If there was a second one, you were penalised. Away from the hospital, investment fund manager Shen Shimin articulates the worries of many women about the impact on their careers of having children. The 30s are the golden age in my profession. If I let the opportunities go by, they may not come back. Bearing a child may be a labour of love, but one that many feel they cannot afford.
And as we heard there, the Chinese state has a history of intervening in family planning to steer the growth of the population. A recent report in the Washington Post suggests that Beijing is now also doing this by making it more difficult for men to get a vasectomy. 12 public hospitals in cities including Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou told the newspaper they no longer perform the procedure. Another 6 hospitals said they still perform vasectomies, but one of them no longer offers the procedure to unmarried men. So it appears vasectomies are not banned, but are actively being discouraged. One doctor who didn't want to give his full name told the paper it's a rather simple surgery in theory, but public hospitals will almost always turn patients away because we are aware of the risks involved in doing something that's not explicitly okayed by the government. For more on this, let's speak with Yun Zhou, Assistant Professor of Sociology at the University of Michigan. Welcome to the program. Now, for more than 30 years, Beijing has tried to control population growth through various methods. There's now a policy allowing for up to 3 children, rather. What accounts for this new measure now of limiting vasectomies?
Thank you for having me. Limiting vasectomy, that's a very layered issue. As you said, Beijing has been curbing population growth for the last 30 years. And in 2016, the one-child policy was universally repealed into a universal two-child policy, allowing up to 2 children for all married heterosexual couples. And in 2021, China released its newest census. This new census showed record low population growth. So soon after the release of the 2020 census, the universal two-child policy was further relaxed into a universal three-child policy, again applying only to married heterosexual couples, and this time allowing birth quota to 3 children per married heterosexual couple. And over the years, in China's population control, all the contraceptive and reproductive measures are mostly targeted at women in trying to regulating female bodies. So over the years, people, both scholars and journalists, have documented abusive measures targeted at women to the point of unconsented sterilization and abortion. And over the years, reproduction has largely been seen as a woman's issue, and it's the woman's body that needs to be regulated. And on the other hand, for men, especially for men's ability to bear a child, that is seen as something men is entitled to. And there are deep sociocultural reasons that it's important to have a family, for men especially in the patriarchal system, to have offspring, preferably male offspring, to carry on the family line.
Now,
So in that sense,
you mentioned, sorry, you did mention that this was the lowest birth rate in 2020. That's in more than 70 years. So there are people in the country who don't want to have more children. What factors play into such decisions?
yeah, so in my own research, I examine why people, especially highly educated urban people, are hesitant about having children. And the reasons are deeply gendered. So, on the one hand, you see for both women and men, here again, we're talking about heterosexual identifying people, that they see time and financial constraints as something that keep them from having children. So high living cost, how competitive the educational system is or they envision it to be for their children, those are barriers that individuals think about when they decide whether to have a child or whether or not to have a second child. However, there are deeply gendered reasons for women as well. So especially for women, a lot of them see having multiple children and having a successful career as fundamentally incompatible. And the desire to pursue and succeed at work becomes another constraint and another obstacle women have to contemplate about when they decide whether to have a child or a second child.
Before I let you go, I do want to ask you, there are other countries, including democracies, that utilize government policies to control the population to either encourage or discourage childbirth. China is facing quite some criticism with their recent measures. Is that fair?
I think so. The fundamental question here is that why is low fertility or high fertility a problem? And it is a problem for whom? In other words, it is fair to criticize any kinds of population control policies that are not fundamentally rooted in issues of human rights and reproductive rights. The regime type here is not, let me rephrase. It is fair to criticize population control policies in any regime type that are not rooted in questions or issues of human rights and reproductive rights.
Rian Zhou with the University of Michigan, thank you very much for your time and your insights.
Thank you.